Scene opens on a frozen, windswept roadside at dusk. Snow swirling across cracked asphalt like ashes from a dying fire. A lone biker, Ryder Callahan, cruises through the chill, engine growling like a beast against the biting wind, leather jacket creaking with each movement. His reputation as a ruthless former Hell's Angel precedes him, feared, whispered about, untouchable. Under the flickering neon of a roadside diner, a small figure shivers violently on the icy sidewalk. A 7-year-old girl, Lila, clutching a ripped, threadbare backpack, tears streaking her cheeks. Her voice cuts through the silence like a knife. "My mom is gone." Instantly, Grimm's buried instincts surge. The protector, the hunter, the man he thought dead inside. Danger hangs heavy in the air. A black SUV waits at a distance, engine silent, shadows shifting inside like predators stalking prey. Grimm dismounts, scanning her wary eyes, feeling the threat before anyone speaks. Walking away is no longer an option. Questions hang sharp and unanswered. Who is trailing her? Why is she here? And how deep does her connection go to Grimm's own shadowed past? Grimm extends a scarred hand. Lila hesitates, fear trembling in her gaze. "Trust me," he growls. The narrator cuts in. "Before we continue, tell me, where are you watching from today? Drop it in the comments. If this story grips you, hit subscribe." Ryder Grimm. Callahan sat hunched over his bike outside the diner, engine ticking in the cold like a restless heartbeat. Leather jacket cracked from years of sun, wind, and fights, tattoos crawling over arms and neck, scars tracing stories no one had the right to ask about. Former Hell's Angel, feared across states, respected even by enemies, Grimm carried an aura of menace, the kind that made strangers step aside and friends tread carefully. Underneath, though, a flicker of something else lingered, something soft he'd long buried. Protector or drifter. Outlaw instincts warred silently with a nascent, fatherly instinct he had yet to understand. The girl, Lila, sat shivering on the diner steps. 7 years old, sharp eyes, defiance threaded with fear. She was tiny but resilient, clutching her tattered backpack like it contained all that kept her safe. Her trust wasn't given lightly, and yet, with every glance, Grimm felt the ice around his chest crack. Her dependence pulled at him, stirring a humanity he thought dead in the chaos of his past. Raven was a ghost from that past, a voice of caution, loyalty forged in fire. He appeared rarely, always with words that carried weight, warnings, guidance, nothing more. Bones McCready, the diner cook, knew Grimm's softer edges, a connection to a world Grimm had tried to leave behind, small-town roots that reminded him he wasn't just a shadow on the road. Then there was Mara, Lila's mother, Grimm's lost flame. Her choices had been driven by survival, leaving town, hiding her daughter, staying one step ahead of enemies who lurked in the darkness. She was strong, selfless, and terrifyingly clever. And then there was the shadow looming behind it all, Victor Kane. Wealthy, cold, and calculating, Kane's threat was insidious, stalking from the shadows with influence and power that could crush anyone unprepared. The world they moved through was harsh and cinematic. The diner, frozen and neon-lit, glowed like a beacon in the cold night. City streets stretched empty, mist curling in alleyways, abandoned warehouses looming like silent sentinels. Snow drifted, wind cut, and every flicker of light painted doubt across Grimm's vision. Every passerby could be a threat. Every shadow could hide eyes. Through it all ran the subtle rules of biker brotherhood: loyalty, honor, coded justice. Grimm's tattoos whispered of past allegiances, scars of fights that had been both brutal and necessary. Rumors followed him, whispered in bars, back roads, and diners like ghosts of deeds long done. He was a man shaped by chaos, yet capable of order when it mattered most. The tension never let up. Lila's presence illuminated vulnerability in Grimm, but also created stakes he could not ignore. The diner's warmth contrasted the biting cold outside, a reminder that even in a frozen, unforgiving world, connections could still spark life. Shadows deepened, footsteps echoed where no one should tread, and the neon flickered as if signaling both danger and hope. In this harsh landscape, every moment carried weight. Grimm's choices mattered. Lila's trust mattered. The balance of power, loyalty, and survival, in a world that had nearly broken him, was now intertwined with the little girl's fragile life. Here, in this cinematic, snow-dusted world, every character was set, every danger implied, and every secret waiting to explode. Grim was no longer just a drifter. He was a man with responsibility, a protector awakening under the weight of his past and the sharp clarity of the present. And in the shadows, Cain watched. Every light, every snowflake, every breath became a heartbeat in the high-stakes, emotionally charged, biker-forged world they now inhabited. Grim guided Lila into the diner, the bell over the door jingling a brittle note that seemed louder than it should in the mere empty space. The warm air hit her face, melting some of the frost that had settled on her cheeks and in her hair. Grim hung back, scanning the parking lot through the window, every muscle coiled and alert. The black SUV lingered near the diner's edge, engine off, shadows shifting behind tinted glass. His gut told him they weren't just bystanders, they were watching. Lila slid onto a cracked vinyl booth, small hands clutching something folded in brown paper. She looked up at him with eyes wide but steady, and slowly unfolded the photo. Grim leaned in, and the sight stole his breath. In the background of the snapshot, a younger version of himself, jacket faded, hair longer, arms crossed as he laughed beside a woman he remembered only in fragments, her hair dark, her smile cautious. His daughter's mother. And his daughter. The weight of reality hit Grim like a freight train. Lila's small voice broke through his stunned silence. "Mama says he's dangerous. He'll come for me if I don't stay hidden." She said you could help. His mind raced, memory and instinct colliding. Mara, the woman he'd loved and lost, had disappeared years ago, leaving no trace, no explanation. And now, all at once, the fragments of his past connected. Lila was his blood, his responsibility, and his world narrowed to this one fragile girl sitting in a diner booth. Emotions surged in, Grim a storm of disbelief, anger, guilt, and an unfamiliar tenderness. He clenched his fists under the table, feeling the leather crack against his knuckles. He was no stranger to danger, but this was different. It wasn't about old debts, club rivalries, or the adrenaline of fights in shadowed back alleys. This was about a little girl who had survived on wit, courage, and sheer luck, someone whose life now rested entirely on him. Walking away was impossible. The diner's rear window reflected a subtle movement. Grim caught the glint of headlights, the SUV creeping along the perimeter, then pausing. Surveillance. His old instincts kicked in. Someone was tracking them, tracking his daughter. The stakes became physical as well as emotional. Every second Lila remained exposed, increased the risk, and Grim's mind raced through possibilities, escape routes, contingencies, and potential confrontations. His outlaw code dictated action, precision, and ruthless efficiency, but this time, the target to protect wasn't a gang member or rival. It was family. He turned to Bones, who had been cleaning the counter but had quietly observed the interaction. She knows me?" Bones asked, hesitant, voice low. Grim nodded slowly, his jaw tight. Bones shook his head. "Your girl's mother, Mara, she left town. Whispered your name like a warning to anyone who might listen. Didn't want anyone to follow, didn't want you dragged into it. Thought she could handle it herself." Bones's tone softened. "She underestimated Cain. That's your threat now." Grim's stomach tightened. Victor Cain. The name carried weight, wealthy, untouchable, cunning. Cain didn't just stalk, he suffocated, moved in shadows, leveraged power with precision. And now, he had Lila in his sights. Raven's call came next. Grim stepped outside, phone pressed to his ear. "Grim, you're walking into fire," Raven warned. "Cain doesn't miss. You dig into this, you're not just risking yourself anymore." Grim's reply was measured, quiet but firm. "I don't get to walk away. Not this time." He felt the tension coiling in his chest, a mix of adrenaline and something else, purpose. Raven's voice softened for a moment, acknowledging the truth. "You always were a protector when it mattered. Just be smart." Inside, Lila fidgeted with the photo, her small brow furrowed. "Will he find me?" she whispered. Grim knelt, placing a scarred hand over hers. "Not if I can stop him. I won't let anyone hurt you. Ever." The words felt foreign on his lips, but he meant every syllable. His outlaw life had been a path of drifting, fighting, and running. Now, it had a destination, her safety. Grim's thoughts tumbled, memories of Mara, his own reckless choices, the man he'd been, and then, the man he needed to become. Father, protector, strategist. His inner monologue was a constant clash, the instincts honed over years of outlaw living, tuned to danger and violence, versus the emerging fragile tenderness required to keep a child safe. Emotional and physical stakes intertwined, each decision weighed against potential consequences. The black SUV shifted outside, a reminder that time was no longer his ally. Grim's eyes scanned the lot, noting exits, angles, potential traps. He understood the rules of engagement: fight smart, avoid exposure, protect the innocent. But he also understood something deeper. Walking away was no longer an option. The girl's life, her mother's sacrifices, his own chance at redemption, they were all on the line. In that moment, the decision crystallized. Grim rose, a storm of resolve behind his cold gaze. "We're leaving," he told Lila, voice low but unwavering. "I'll keep you safe. No one will touch you." Her eyes searched his, a flicker of trust forming. She slid into his side, tiny hand fitting into his. He felt the weight, the gravity, the responsibility, and he didn't flinch. Stepping out into the icy air, Grim swung a leg over his bike, revving the engine. The growl of the motor was both a warning and a promise. The SUV started to move again, tailing them at a distance. Grim's heart hammered, but his mind was clear. He was committed. There was no turning back. The path ahead would be dangerous, fraught with threats both seen and unseen, but he had chosen it. He was no longer a drifter. He was a father. And for the first time in years, his purpose was unmistakable. With Lila clinging to him, Grim rode into the night, shadows stretching long across frozen asphalt. The wind bit, snow swirled, but nothing could shake the determination building inside him. Every instinct, every scar, every lesson learned from years in the outlaw world, he would use it all to protect this girl. And in doing so, he would confront not only the dangers pursuing them, but also the man he had once been. Redemption would not be given. It would be fought for, every mile, every heartbeat, every choice. The path was set. Grim was no longer just Ryder Callahan, outlaw drifter. He was Grim, protector, father, and a force ready to confront a past that had waited years to catch up with him. And with Lila by his side, the stakes were higher than ever, because this was more than survival. This was reclamation of life, love, and honor, long denied. Grim guided Lila through the bitter night, each stop calculated, each turn deliberate. Their first refuge was an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, its broken windows and rusting metal beams offering anonymity. Snow had piled in corners, drifting over shattered crates, but the building's emptiness worked to their advantage. Grim scanned the shadows constantly, engine growls from his bike outside, masking their presence when necessary. Lila clung to her tattered backpack, eyes wide, but her trust in him grew with every careful step. "This is temporary," he told her, his voice gruff but steady, "but you're safe here, for now." The next day, they moved to back roads, winding through forested terrain where the tires crunched over icy gravel. Grim kept Lila close, teaching her to watch for signs of surveillance, to notice when engines hummed in the distance, to read the subtle cues of someone following. Each lesson was small, a warning signal, a hand gesture, but with each one, the bond between father and daughter deepened. Grim would occasionally talk about Mara, carefully framing stories that showed strength, love, and survival, while never revealing too much of the darkness that had stalked them for years. Lila listened, wide-eyed and silent, soaking up lessons with an instinctual understanding beyond her age. Early confrontations began subtly. A black SUV trailing too closely at a gas station. A man loitering near a playground as Lila collected coins for candy. Grim's instincts flared each time, but he restrained himself from violence when possible, relying on strategy and intimidation to keep them safe. Every encounter reminded him of the stakes, of how far Kane's reach extended. The world they were navigating was not just dangerous, it was unpredictable. Moral tension gnawed at Grim. Years of outlaw life had taught him to solve problems with violence, to strike first and ask questions later. But Lila was fragile. She was human, innocent. Every decision had to weigh protection against harm, justice against vengeance. The lessons of biker code loyalty, honor, calculated strength now guided him in a different way. Grim made contact with old allies cautiously. Raven, always the cautious brother, advised remotely, "Don't let anger drive your hand." Kane watches everything. Bones provided information about Mara's last known locations, while Chainsaw offered muscle and tactical insight, a reminder that Grim had friends in the shadows willing to help, but only if he didn't let rage dictate action. The tension escalated in crowded spaces. In a bustling market, Lila wandered just a few feet ahead of Grim, distracted by bright trinkets and the smell of fresh bread. Grim's heart hammered as he noticed a shadow that mirrored theirs across the plaza. In an instant, she vanished behind a stall, swallowed by the crowd. Panic ripped through him, old adrenaline surging. Grim moved like a predator, scanning exits, calculating paths, relying on instincts honed over decades. Moments later, he found her crouched behind a crate, clutching a doll she had tried to buy, frightened but unharmed. He scooped her into his arms, murmuring reassurances as she clung tightly to his leather-clad chest. The incident cemented a mutual understanding. Grim would always be her shield, and she would always trust him to find her. As the nights passed, the stakes continued to climb. Victor Kane's men became bolder, leaving evidence of their presence: a footprint in snow, a discarded phone, subtle signs of surveillance. Grim's focus sharpened. Every road, every diner, every corner could be a trap. Yet through it all, Lila's resilience impressed him. She began noticing things he hadn't: a glint of reflection on a windshield, a pattern in the cars that tailed them. She shared her observations with him, and for the first time, Grim realized that survival was a team effort. They took to hidden cabins, far from town, places with wood-burning stoves and high vantage points. Here, Grim taught Lila to read the environment, to spot danger before it came too close, to stay silent when the world was noisy. Their bond strengthened through shared routines, scavenging firewood, preparing simple meals, and recounting fragmented stories of Mara. Each task, mundane on the surface, became a ritual of trust and protection, a bridge from Grim's violent past to the present responsibility he had chosen. Minor violent encounters tested their limits. A thug from Grim's past mistook them for a rival, forcing Grim to react. With precision, he neutralized the threat without killing, reinforcing the lesson that strength could coexist with restraint. Every skirmish, every close call, honed Grim's awareness while reminding Lila of the dangers lurking in the shadows. Momentum accelerated as Grim fully committed. Walking away was impossible. He no longer carried the freedom of a drifter. The hunter had become the hunted. Kane's shadow loomed closer each day, tightening around them like a noose. Grim's mental calculations extended beyond immediate threats. He mapped escape routes, prepped safe houses, and coordinated with allies without exposing them unnecessarily. The duality of his world became clear: outsider and protector, outlaw and father, predator and guardian. Through this crucible, Grim and Lila evolved together. She was learning to survive, to trust, to lean on someone strong without losing her own agency. He was rediscovering a humanity he had buried under tattoos, scars, and solitude. Together, they navigated back roads, abandoned warehouses, and hidden cabins, forging a bond unbroken by fear, strengthened by the constant, lurking threat of Kane. Every movement, every decision, every shadow in the corner became a testament to the lengths Grim would go to protect his daughter. By the end of this stage, Grim understood the reality. Kane's reach was vast, the stakes life and death, and compromise not an option. The world they traversed was unforgiving, but it had also become a canvas for redemption. Grim's outlaw instincts remained, but now they served a purpose greater than self-preservation. The hunter had become a father, a protector, and a man willing to face shadows from his past to secure a future for the girl at his side. Every chase, every narrow escape, every moment of fear underscored one truth: Grim's choice was irreversible. Lila's survival was his mission, and in protecting her, he discovered the first glimmers of redemption. The rising tension built toward a confrontation that could no longer be delayed. Cain was closing in, allies were watching, and Grimm's transformation from drifter to father protector was reaching its inevitable, cinematic crescendo. At every stop along snow-covered back roads and beneath flickering neon, the lessons of loyalty, restraint, and tactical cunning merged with the raw human emotion of fatherhood. Grimm's world, once governed by solitude and survival, was now intertwined with Lila's vulnerability, resilience, and trust. Every heartbeat, every calculated decision, pushed them closer to the moment where Grimm would have to confront the shadows of his past to protect the only family he had ever truly known. The tension, danger, and bond cultivated in these sequences ensured that neither Grimm nor Lila could return to the lives they had known before. Each safe house became a temporary haven. Each minor threat, a reminder of the ever-present danger, and every shared story, a thread weaving them closer. By the time the rising action concluded, Grimm was no longer simply a biker on the run. He was a guardian, a strategist, and a father bound to his daughter's survival above all else. Momentum was set, stakes elevated, and the path toward confrontation inevitable. Grimm had committed. The hunter had become the hunted, and the cinematic journey toward redemption, danger, and ultimate confrontation was fully underway. The threat escalated with a chilling precision. Cain's men were no longer random tailing vehicles or shadowy figures at gas stations. They were professionals, disciplined, coordinated, and familiar with Grimm's habits. Each maneuver revealed knowledge of his past, exploiting contacts he thought were neutral or loyal. Even Raven, his old biker brother, warned in clipped tones, "They know the code." Cain's playing chess. Grimm, don't be the pawn. Grimm understood immediately. This was no longer just about protecting Lila. Cain intended to draw him out, corner him, and expose every weakness Grimm had spent years burying. Betrayal came in a quiet, almost cinematic moment. An old ally, Chainsaw, whom Grimm had trusted for years, showed signs of allegiance to Cain. The revelation arrived as subtle hints. A missing message, a suspicious tip-off, a vehicle parked too close to a safe house. Grimm felt the familiar sting of anger but forced restraint. His instinct screamed to strike, to confront, to punish, but Lila's safety demanded caution. He weighed his next move carefully, realizing trust could no longer be automatic. Every decision now carried life-or-death consequences. Lila, small but astute, began to contribute actively. During a night in a derelict cabin, she pointed out a sequence of patterns in the vehicles following them, rotation of plates, timings, and routes that indicated Cain's operatives were coordinating their movements. Grimm's eyes narrowed as he processed her observations. She had learned to read the threats like a miniature strategist. The father-daughter bond deepened not just through protection, but through collaboration. She was no longer just someone to shield. She was a partner in survival. Authorities became a complicating factor. Grimm's past, reputation, and tattoos painted him as a dangerous outlaw in the eyes of law enforcement. Routine checkpoints, questioning, and casual surveillance now turned into a game of evasion without exposure. Every interaction had to balance legality and necessity. Grimm avoided lethal conflict, using calculated deception and strategic intimidation to navigate officers without revealing Mara or Lila's location. Flashbacks haunted him throughout. Grimm remembered violent nights when he had let instinct drive action, murders avoided at the last moment, vengeance postponed, enemies left alive when the code demanded only necessity, not indulgence. Each memory served as a reminder. The line between survival and brutality was razor-thin, and he could not allow history to repeat itself. The weight of his past pressed on him, reminding him that his moral code was both a shield and a sword. Cain's moves became urgent. A message delivered through a dead drop implied Mara's location might soon be revealed. Grimm knew the clock was ticking. Every hour spent calculating risk, every mile traveled through snow-covered back roads, brought him closer to confrontation. Lila's safety, Mara's freedom, and his own redemption hinged on acting before Cain closed the net. Grimm felt the tension coil in his chest, a mix of anticipation, fear, and determination. The emotional stakes now ran deep. Lila's innocence, her reliance on Grimm, contrasted sharply with the man he had been, A killer, a drifter, a ghost of loyalty twisted by years of outlaw life. Protecting her was more than duty, it was a chance at atonement. Mara's safety was intertwined with his own capacity for change. Every step forward, every evasion, every careful reconnaissance carried spiritual weight. Grim was no longer escaping himself. He was shaping the man he wanted to be for his daughter and the woman he once loved. Obstacles continued to multiply. Safe houses were compromised by subtle surveillance. A stray comment at a diner or a phone call flagged them as targets. Grim's instincts kept them one step ahead, but each encounter tested patience, endurance, and mental resilience. Cain was relentless, using his wealth and influence to manipulate environments, blur visibility, and spread fear. Grim and Lila moved constantly, sleeping in cabins, abandoned factories, and the occasional hidden apartment, always staying one step ahead of the predator whose obsession had no bounds. Trust became a fragile commodity. Every contact Grim once counted on had to be assessed. Raven remained cautious but loyal, Bones quietly vigilant, while Chainsaw's defection introduced paranoia. Grim began using subtle misdirection to protect Lila, fake routes, decoy vehicles, and false trails. He balanced the morality of deception against necessity, his outlaw instincts working in tandem with emerging fatherly responsibility. Lila, observing silently, began to understand these nuances, showing a maturity beyond her years in both strategy and intuition. Cain's harassment escalated with psychological games. Grim and Lila discovered threatening notes, subtle warnings left at abandoned sites, and anonymous calls meant to unsettle them. The stress tested Grim's patience. Every calculated decision had to account for Lila's safety, the potential exposure of Mara, and the unpredictable reactions of the professionals Cain had dispatched. Grim's mind constantly balanced offense and defense, strategy and instinct, all while maintaining a protective calm that reassured Lila. The ticking clock loomed ominously. Mara's location had to be secured before Cain could leverage his operatives against her. Grim used intelligence gathered from allies, Lila's keen observations, and his own knowledge of his past contacts to trace likely hiding spots. Each clue, each lead, and each minor confrontation increased the tension, compressing the narrative into a high-stakes countdown. Amid the danger, the father-daughter bond solidified. Lila showed courage, resourcefulness, and compassion in small but pivotal ways. She helped Grim evade traps, noticed inconsistencies in enemy movements, and reinforced the emotional weight of their journey. Grim, in turn, revealed layers of himself, memories of his own childhood, fragmented tales of Mara, and moments of vulnerability that humanized him in a way no one had witnessed in decades. Every step toward Mara's location tested Grim's moral limits. Violence was tempting, but restraint became the measure of his evolution. He relied on calculated intimidation, silent tactical maneuvers, and precise confrontation to outsmart Cain's operatives. The danger never let up. Every corner could hide an ambush, every shadow could conceal an enemy, and every decision could determine life or death. By the end of this phase, Grim had transformed from a lone drifter into a protective, calculating father figure. The narrative tension was near its peak. Cain's ultimate move was imminent. Mara's safety teetered on a knife edge, and the lives of both Grim and Lila depended on his ability to merge outlaw instinct with newfound responsibility. The story poised itself for the climax, with every emotional, spiritual, and physical stake converging toward an inevitable confrontation. The stage was set for Grim to confront the culmination of his past and the threat to his future. Cain's shadow hung heavier than ever, but Grim's resolve had solidified. He would protect Lila, rescue Mara, and face the darkness that had defined him for years. The countdown was clear, and every moment brought the cinematic showdown closer, promising high tension, emotional resonance, and the defining moment of redemption. Grim's bike hummed quietly as he parked a few blocks from the rundown motel. Snow swirled around him, muted by the heavy night, headlights from Cain's SUVs flickering faintly against the icy asphalt. He crouched behind a rusted dumpster, surveying the lot. Two men in dark suits scanned the perimeter while another monitored the front door. Every instinct honed from years in outlaw clubs screamed, this was Cain's trap, but Grim also knew he could turn it into an opportunity. He slipped silently into the shadows, moving from cover to cover, eyes sharp, ears alert to every footstep and engine hum. He had mapped the layout in his mind: the back exit, the fire escape, the alley where a single shot could incapacitate without lethal intent. Grimm's fingers brushed the grip of his old Colt, a relic from his darker days, now a symbol of readiness, not recklessness. Inside the motel, Mara huddled on the bed, exhaustion etched into her features. Lila clutched her mother's hand, trembling yet alert. Grimm's entrance was ghost-like. He signaled Lila to stay low, to trust him as they had for weeks. He moved with precision, intercepting Kane's men near the lobby with quick, non-lethal strikes, using shadows and surprise to incapacitate without crossing the line he had sworn not to violate. From the window, Kane's silhouette became visible. He leaned on his luxury car, an aura of arrogance and entitlement surrounding him. He believed money and connections could control the scene, but Grimm's presence, calm and calculated, forced Kane into a corner. Grimm's voice, low and commanding, carried through the night. "Leave her, or everything you've built falls apart." The threat was unmistakable. Kane's operatives hesitated, uncertainty flickering across their disciplined faces. Lila, watching from behind Mara, saw her father in full command, every movement measured, every decision precise. The boyish fear of weeks ago melted into awe. This was not violence for its own sake. Grimm fought with restraint, thinking, calculating, and protecting. Every strike, every maneuver, was for them. The bond between father and daughter crystallized in this crucible of danger. Lila's small hand instinctively reached for Grimm's shoulder. He squeezed hers once, a silent promise of safety. The confrontation reached its apex when Kane himself stepped forward, his voice sharp with menace. Grimm met him without hesitation, eyes locked, aura commanding. Kane's wealth and status meant nothing against a man with nothing to lose but everything to protect. Grimm's reputation as a ruthless outlaw became a weapon in itself. The silent warning in his stance told Kane any impulsive move would be disastrous. After tense moments that stretched like hours, Kane retreated, realizing the cost of aggression outweighed the reward. His operatives followed, leaving Grimm, Mara, and Lila in the stillness of the snowy night. Mara rushed to Lila, embracing her daughter with tears streaming down both their faces. Grimm watched quietly, a rare smile touching his rugged features. He had delivered them not through bloodlust, but through courage, precision, and a commitment to the protection of the innocent. Redemption was no longer abstract. It was lived in this very moment. For the first time in decades, Grimm allowed himself to feel permanence. The drifter life, the endless nights of running and fighting, faded behind him. In its place stood the certainty of fatherhood and responsibility, the weight and warmth of protecting someone more precious than his own freedom. The night was silent now, save for the distant hum of retreating engines and the soft crunch of snow beneath boots. Grimm knew the battle had ended, but his life had only just begun, with family, honor, and the quiet satisfaction of redemption earned through restraint and courage. Grimm rode slowly up the quiet suburban street, the hum of his bike muted by fresh snow. The modest house at the end of the lane glowed with warm, golden light through frosted windows. For weeks, he had been on the run, chasing shadows and threats, but now the cold, endless road behind him seemed like a distant memory. Lila clutched his hand tightly as they approached, her small boots crunching in the snow, a mix of excitement and relief in every step. Mara followed close behind, weary but determined, her face softening as she glimpsed the home that would be their refuge. Inside, the house smelled of pine and dust, the walls bare but full of potential. Grimm began the task of settling in, methodically unpacking, moving essentials from his biker life while discarding items that no longer served their future. Leather jackets, chains, and old weapons went into storage, leaving only what could be used for protection. A few knives, a handgun locked away, and the motorcycle helmet now resting quietly by the door. The gesture was symbolic, a shedding of his old identity while acknowledging he would never fully erase it. Lila ran through the rooms, eyes wide, discovering small nooks and imagining places to play. She stopped in the corner and began setting up a small tree she had saved from their motel stop, decorating it with handmade ornaments. Mara helped, guiding her gentle hands, occasionally exchanging glances with Grimm. He remained mostly silent, observing quietly, But for the first time in decades, he felt a calm he had thought impossible. The tension that had defined his life. The constant vigilance, the suspicion, the fear had lifted, replaced with something heavier but more grounding: responsibility, love, and belonging. The trio ate their first meal together, simple but warm. Lila chatted endlessly about what they could do next. Mara responded with patient encouragement, and Grim listened, interjecting occasionally, his voice low but measured. Conversations were free of the fear that had haunted them. Instead, they were building a new rhythm, a new dynamic. Mara, who had been defined by the need to hide and survive, began to let herself hope. She smiled, laughing softly at Lila's animated stories. Grim felt a flicker of pride and relief he had not allowed himself to experience in years. Old allies reached out in the weeks following their move. Raven called first, his voice cautious but approving, acknowledging Grim's restraint and growth. Even Bones and Chainsaw checked in, offering resources without intruding. It became clear that Grim's reputation had transformed, not just feared as an enforcer, but respected as a man capable of controlled strength and deep loyalty. Lila's presence humanized him, forcing him to reconcile the man he had been with, the man he wanted to become. Despite the relative safety of the house, subtle reminders of the outside world lingered. Kane's shadow was diminished but not entirely gone. The threat remained a quiet hum in Grim's mind. He installed cameras, kept patrols in rotation around the property, and occasionally rode out to scout the area. The vigilance was part of his nature, but now it was tempered by purpose. Every action was measured, every decision made with Lila's safety and Mara's peace in mind. The days of reckless aggression were gone, replaced by deliberate, principled action. The house became a canvas for transformation. Lila painted walls, arranged bookshelves, and explored the tiny backyard with Mara, while Grim focused on repairs and fortifying their home. Each day felt like a battle won, not against enemies, but against the habits and fears that had ruled his life for decades. Small victories compounded. Laughter replaced silence, routines replaced endless vigilance, and moments of quiet reflection replaced nights spent pacing alone or riding through frozen highways. Mara, once consumed by fear and sacrifice, began reclaiming herself. She cooked meals without fear of interruption, walked the local streets during daylight, and engaged with neighbors. Her trust in Grim grew steadily. She saw in him the unwavering protector she had hoped for when leaving him behind years ago. Lila thrived, gaining confidence and curiosity, forming bonds in this new world, no longer defined by constant danger. Grim, for his part, experienced a slow but undeniable internal shift. He still bore the scars of his past, physical and emotional, but they no longer dictated his choices. Fatherhood became the central axis of his life, providing a purpose he had never felt on the road. His identity as an outlaw remained, but it was now balanced by moral clarity and compassion. Where once he had drifted aimlessly, he now anchored himself in family and home. As snow fell one evening, soft against the windows, Grim watched Lila hang the final ornament on their small tree. Mara sat beside her, whispering encouragement. He stood in the doorway silently, letting the scene imprint on him. A life reclaimed, a future slowly being built. Kane's presence might linger, shadows might still flicker at the edges of their safety, but they would face it together. Grim was no longer just a drifter or an outlaw. He was a father, a protector, and a man who had found redemption not through violence but through steadfast love and responsibility. The night closed around them, the house glowing warmly in the snowstorm. Grim stepped outside briefly, his breath visible in the cold air, and looked down the street. The road was still there, dark and endless, but for the first time, he didn't feel compelled to ride it. He had a home, he had family. And he knew that while the world outside remained unpredictable, the circle he had fought so hard to protect, Mara and Lila, was safe, for now, and that was enough. Wordlessly, Grim returned inside, the crunch of snow fading behind him. Lila called out, "Daddy, come see!" and he smiled, letting himself be called what he had long denied. Redemption wasn't perfect, it wasn't total, but in this modest house, amidst warmth, laughter, and the soft glow of the winter night, it was real. Grim's journey proves that the shadows of one's past do not dictate the path to redemption. A life built on fear, violence, and drifting can transform when responsibility and love take root. Through his relationship with Lila, Grimm discovers that true strength lies not in intimidation or brute force, but in protecting those who cannot protect themselves, and in making choices guided by honor rather than impulse. Fatherhood awakens a part of him long buried beneath scars and tattoos, a part capable of tenderness, patience, and unwavering loyalty. The emotional core of the story underscores that redemption is not granted by deeds of violence or revenge, but through courage tempered by compassion, restraint, and moral clarity. Grimm's transformation from feared Hell's Angel to devoted protector demonstrates that even the hardest hearts can change when someone else matters more than themselves. The outlaw world is harsh, but choices rooted in loyalty, honor, and protection define the real measure of a man. Grimm's evolution reminds viewers that appearances can deceive. A drifter with a dangerous reputation can harbor profound love, moral courage, and the capacity for emotional rebirth. It is a testament to the human potential for change, even amid grit and danger. Narrator closes, "Tonight, we witnessed a man haunted by years of violence and isolation discover his true purpose through the love of a child." Grimm's story reminds us that even the toughest hearts can change when someone else becomes more important than yourself. Call to action. If this journey moved you, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and share in the comments how you would fight to protect someone you love. And tell us, who should Grimm trust next as he navigates the shadows of his past? Outrow imagery. Snow drifts over Grimm's parked bike, headlights reflecting frost, while inside, father and daughter laugh together, the glow of the house symbolizing hope, safety, and resilience.